Hello and welcome to another Blues Focus match preview. A bit of a older format this time, what we used to last season, the Championship, as we are joined by a live guest as we have John here. How you doing, John?
Yeah, I'm good, Sam. Thanks for having me.
No worries, and yeah, really excited to be able to speak to you ahead of this game in the FA Cup fourth round against Newcastle United because we're on this unbeaten run at the moment of 18 games, but Newcastle is by far our toughest test of that run. So, in terms of you guys at the moment, obviously you had your victory in the EFL Cup semi-final against Arsenal, 2-0 victors at St James's Park. What was that game like? Because watching it on TV, you could see that the crowd were proper into it, and it's meant so much to the players and the fans.
Yeah, that competition, we've looked like the team that's wanted to win it the most all the way through, I think, in every single round. I think maybe we had one game that we drew Wimbledon at their place, and I don't know if you remember, they had like an issue with their pitch. Like it basically they had like a sinkhole. So the game had to be moved to St James's Park, and that wasn't exactly a spectacle. That game we got through 1-0, but with the exception of that game, every single match you can see that not only are the fans really up for it, but the players are, and there's a real desire there. They want to be, this group of players want to be the group of players that end that 70-odd-year domestic trophy drought, the 56 years since we won the Fairs Cup, which is a defunct competition and some argue isn't an elite competition. I mean, who cares? Like, we won it at the end of the day. But no, it was a tremendous occasion. It's the best atmosphere in the stadium since the Paris Saint-Germain game last season, which was just unbelievable, really. But look, I think the players did their bit to keep that atmosphere going because they showed real desire and real intent all the way through. The style of play, we really pressed them. And didn't give them a chance to breathe, really. And yeah, like deserved winners over the two legs. We dominated Arsenal, and they're a really good side. And that can be a frustration for us because there'll be other games where we don't have that, and and you think, well, how on earth have we lost at home to Fulham, or kind of being shown up as good a side Bournemouth are? They're not Arsenal, so I think that's the real question: is can we be consistent enough? And hopefully we show a little bit more of that consistency moving forward.
Yeah, and you said about earlier on there that Newcastle were the team that kind of want this competition the most in a way, and I imagine that's fueled by what happened against Manchester United a couple of years ago. But with Newcastle at the moment, under Eddie Howe, I think it's just over 3 years now that he's been in charge of Newcastle. Just what sort of impact has Eddie Howe had on the Newcastle team? Because you can see definitely from the fans that they buy into him, and he's such a highly rated coach, and he's done a superb job at Newcastle.
Well, let's look at what we had before Eddie Howe, and I'll be really nice about this. It wasn't a very high bar, right? When Steve Bruce was managing Birmingham, he did, he was at a very different stage of his career to when he came in at Newcastle, and every player under Steve Bruce regressed. And that that might seem like a really sweeping statement, but I can't name you one player that became a better footballer because Steve Bruce was the manager. And when he look, it was clear that he wasn't going to be tenable when the new owners came in. I think um, his contract had kind of been set up with signed an extension, and essentially there was a really nice handshake if he was to leave. And I think that was set up purely because Mike was Mike actually was trying to sell the club. He was trying to move it onto the Saudi investment fund, so that was his way of being able to look after Steve Bruce when he left. Um, but when Eddie Howe came in, I think what you've got to realise, we had players like Joe Linton, who now is probably, I mean, we're going to miss him. He's out for a few weeks. You'll be happy to hear he's certainly not going to play on Saturday. Um, but he's the kind of player that you miss, like when he's not there. And when Steve Bruce was managing him, he was a joke of a player, and that sounds a really harsh thing to say about a footballer who's talented, but I remember being at Carrow Road in the away end and watching Timu Pukki score a hat trick against us, and Joe Linton did not look like a £40 million striker, and he's not a striker, and Eddie Howe's turned him into, a very unique box to box midfielder who suffocates you, if you're in there with him. But there's one example of a player that's really improved. But also you've got players like Emil Kraft, who is a a very good option as a reserve centre half or right back. You've got players like Jacob Murphy, who now is our one and only right winger at the club, but he's been creating chances and scoring goals, and obviously scored last night again. He's really got the most out of those players that he can get out of them, and I think that's the bit that we have to remember with Eddie Howe. That's where his real class comes in, and he's not been backed for the last 3 windows. He's people here, Saudi Public Investment Fund, and you'll probably get a little bit of this with obviously your takeover and Tom Brady and everyone thinking, oh well, Birmingham have got a lot of money. You're not going to be able to spend the money in the same way if you get promoted into the Championship, because then that's when the financial regulations hit. It's the most Newcastle United thing in the world to be bought out by the richest people in the world, and you're not allowed to spend the money. It's so odd. But for me, it wasn't about us being bought by the Saudi Investment Fund. It was about being bought by people who wanted us to improve and wanted us to get better. And every element of the club has been improving, has been getting better. Yes, it's more expensive to go and watch us now, but when you go and watch us, it's a great brand of football. It's a club that wants to be united and move together. And yeah, it's the journey is going to be really excitable, I think, and hopefully, as I say, middle of March, and I know that's not the competition we're talking about, but that's going to be the start of the trophy run. We hope.
And you said there it's a very Newcastle thing that when you got took over by the Saudis, you couldn't spend the money. I mean, a very typical Blues thing is having our takeover and then being relegated the next season. That's very
Yeah.
typical of us. But in terms of like, I was going to actually ask about the takeover and what it can do to rejuvenate a city, because we've seen it with Birmingham that we had, just doom and gloom for such a long time and owners that didn't really care about us. And I kind of see the same thing with Newcastle, where you had an owner before that didn't really care about the club, and then new people have come in, and there's just that lift of spirit. And I think the cup semi-final earlier this week really epitomised that. But in terms of what the takeover has done for the city and the support of the team, it's just done wonders, isn't it?
Yeah, it's re-engaged a lot of people with the club who'd walked away. Lots of people walked away in 2008 when Keegan went and never went back into St James's Park after that moment. And the first time they were back in the ground was the Spurs game after the takeover. That's how strongly they felt about the way that he treated Keegan, but also there were other incidents in there which I'll not go into. But for me, the apathy really set in. So I had a season ticket for 15 years, and I gave mine up 2015, and apathy had just set in. And it gets to the point where you're like, well, actually, if you're not going to try and get better, why should I continue to spend money going to watch you and see you just try to exist in the Premier League? Because that was, and look, we're a lot of things, and I don't think we're an entitled fan base. I think all we want is there was banners that went up in the away end, and they said, we don't want a team that wins, we demand a club that tries. And I think that's the epitome of it, really. And I think every football fan and every club deserves their owners to want to have them improve. And I don't think that should be an unreasonable request. And look, anyone who owns a football club, they're probably very successful business people. They would want their businesses to improve. So why on earth wouldn't they want their football club to improve? And that was the thing that was suffocating about the Ashley regime. It was the acceptance of, well, this is what we have and this is where we are, and everything else. But ultimately, when you plaster your own brand over the stadium and you don't pay any sponsorship or very little sponsorship, when he did allegedly pay some, when you do that, you're suffocating a chance to bring more money in to be able to spend more. I've got no issue with the football club trying to run break even. I think it's quite sensible actually as an approach. I've got no issue with it at all. But he was just, well, it's going to break even at kind of where it is at the minute. It wasn't about trying to get it to get better. So when the takeover happened for me, that was what it was about. It, as I mentioned before, it wasn't about it being, what, they're 26 times richer than Man City or whatever. All of that stuff didn't matter. It was about having owners that wanted you to get better. And, we've got better on the pitch. We've got better off the pitch. There's things like we've got the fan zone at Stack, which can hold 3,000 people, but that's a venue that can get used 7 days a week with it's like a box park. kind of place with live entertainment every night and plenty of food and drink options. So it's another revenue stream, but it's a great, atmosphere. If you go in on a match tonight or go in to watch a match or just go for a night out and say, actually, we're going to go there, and 6 of our mates will go, and 3 of them will have Chinese, 3 of them will have barbecue food or whatever, but you can all get a whatever you want to drink, and it's a good atmosphere. And it's ideas like that where you think, actually, yeah, there's a bit of thought there, because that's going to continue to bring revenue for the football club. So they are thinking about all the different ways they can improve. Ultimately, what Newcastle fans want more than anything is to win football matches, and that it's as simple as that. Like any football fan, you want to see your club be successful. The takeover allowed us a chance to be successful because the club's going to continue to grow and continue to improve.
Sounds very similar to Birmingham, actually, with the investment that the owners have put into like the match day experience as a whole, and not really just the football. Because I'm sure, like yourself, just dreading going to games when you're losing and that. But then now that we've got that winning vibe around the place, and you've got people at the top that really do care about the people at the bottom, it just goes to show that a real healthy relationship can be formed. And you said about watching a winning team, and obviously Newcastle going well in the Premier League at the moment, in the cup final, and also now still in the FA Cup as well. So in terms of your perspective, where do you think Newcastle's priorities lie now? Because looking at this game and looking at how Newcastle performed yesterday, if it's the same team that plays against us, we might be in trouble. So in terms of rotation, could we see a similar team that lined up against Bromley, or more of the same of what we saw against Arsenal?
I really hope we don't kind of play a Bromley 11. I'd like to see us. I'm not going to kid myself. He's going to make changes, right? There's definitely going to be some changes, but let's just remember, like, Nick Pope was on the bench last night, as was Callum Wilson. So Joe Willett was one night who came off the bench. There's players there that are Premier League level players that aren't getting minutes that you can put in, right? And I've got no major issue with a little bit of rotation. 5 or 6 changes, fine. 9 or 10, I'd rather not, because whatever you think of, there's however many places between the two sides. You said yourself, what is it, 18 games unbeaten or something, did you say?
Yeah.
So, so you're a team in form, you're at home, it's the FA Cup. I do not want there to be a highlight reel of, Alexander Isak trudging off looking gutted because because we haven't gone through. I don't want to see that, and you can't take that risk. It's and also with the replays going away, it's not like we can play for a draw and bring it back to St James's. We've got to finish the tie off. But I really hope we look as passionate about winning the game as we have about winning games in the League Cup, because although we're already in a cup final, for me, look, I'm not very fussy at the moment because we haven't won anything in 50 odd years, right? But if you were to say to me, what trophy do you want to win more than any other trophy as a football fan, it would be the FA Cup. And that's ahead of the Champions League, that's ahead of the Premier League, ahead of the League Cup. But yeah, I'll be elated if we win the League Cup in March. Of course I will. But the FA Cup is such a special competition, and it means so much. And I remember 98, 99 when we got to cup finals, and we just didn't turn up on the day. 2000, we got to the semi-final and were probably unlucky to lose against Chelsea at Wembley. And then they went on and played one of the worst cup finals I've ever seen, the last one at the old Wembley, against Villa. And I think they won it on penalties, if I remember rightly. So it was under win. It was a goal in extra time they got. But either way, it was a dreadful, dreadful cup final. And if we got to that final, we would have won. So there's missed opportunities there. There's a bit of unfinished business in the FA Cup for Newcastle United as a club generally. But look, this is no sure thing. Going away in the FA Cup is dangerous. We're on TV 6:15. It's 6:15 on Saturday night. Interesting kickoff. But it's a slot which is very much reserved for we think there could be an upset tonight. So if we turn up and we make 9 or 10 changes and you win, I mean that makes us look ridiculous. So yeah, 4 or 5 changes I can kind of accept. If we go for 9 or 10, I'll not be happy, but there'll definitely be changes. You'll not be looking at the same side that played last night.
And as you said, FA Cup, very historic competition. It's been selected for coverage on Saturday night on BBC One. And I've been doing a bit of research as to what Newcastle fans are thinking at the moment. When I listened to the Rest is Football podcast, it was Alan Shearer that was saying about the Birmingham game, and he said that St Andrews was a bit of a bogey ground for him. and done some research, and we've I think it's two wins in 11 that Newcastle have got at St Andrews. So yeah, maybe it is a bit of a bogey ground. And in terms of memories that you've got of Newcastle versus Birmingham, does any stand out to you in particular?
Unfortunately, yes. I was at St Andrews in January 2007 when we went there. Now that Bruce was managing you at the time, we went 2-1 up in the tie. Now I don't remember this, but Alex, who runs our podcast, or helps run our podcast with Shah and Sai, he said that apparently at one point we were singing "We Sent You Down" and you're going out, and then you's equalised. And then the replay, you smashed to a 5-1 at St James's Park, and I was at both of those games. And yeah, but we'd taken 4,000 fans to Birmingham, and there was only 16,000 at St Andrews that day. I imagine it's going to be a very different dynamic. I think we've got like the minimum allocation basically, and then I think you're now in a situation where because you're a little bit more, you got more chance of success because you've got ambitious owners. You're going to fill more of the stadium. So it's a very, very different dynamic. But yeah, we haven't had a fantastic record at St Andrews. I don't remember it being a nice place to go as an away fan. And yeah, but that's probably the main memory for me. It's the only time I've been to St Andrews, but that's the one that sticks out. Is that we really, we went 2-1 up, and I thought, right, great, let's see this out. You equalised, and I thought, oh, it's all right, we'll beat them at St James's. You'd never make that assumption in the FA Cup, never.
Yeah, the FA Cup is the home of upsets, isn't it? And in terms of your predictions for this game, what scoreline are you forecasting? Because as you said, there's no replays. You get extra time, and then it could even go to penalty. So what prediction are you saying, John?
2-1 will nick it, I think. I think he'll definitely make changes. And I think he might have to bring on some of our our better players in the second half to see the game out and ultimately win. So I think that Isak's going to come off the bench and score the winner. But yeah, 2-1. I think we need to continue to have this passion for these competitions. I just think they're so important, and all the time we're not in Europe, it's a fantastic opportunity to attack these competitions. But again, it's the FA Cup. Like, we should want to win this competition. We've got a fantastic chance. I think Arsenal, of course, were knocked out by Man United. There's going to be more Premier League teams knocked out. If we can get through this round, and get home draw, you're only 2 games away from getting back to Wembley again. So I think that's the thing. I think we essentially want to camp ourselves just in that part of North London for the rest of the season, and go back a couple more times. But yeah, 2-1 we edge it. But I think it's going to be a really, really tough game, and I think if we are complacent, that's really dangerous, and there's potential for an upset.
I'm just really hoping that we don't embarrass ourselves. I'm sure this season, the way that we've been going about our business, that it'll be a performance that hopefully we, show a bit of pride and grit. And with that sold out St Andrews, you just don't really know what could happen. So I'm thinking that it will go to extra time, but then maybe Newcastle, as you said, bring off some quality on the bench and then kind of run away with it in extra time. So yeah, if it goes the full distance, I'll be happy with that. And regardless of what the result is, I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere with the Geordies travelling in their numbers. So in terms of where we can find you on social media, John, what are you up to at the moment, and will you be doing anything covering this game?
So we're part of the True Faith podcast, which is TFNUFC, on X and all the other kind of social media platforms, but we're also on YouTube as well. So we have a free podcast that comes out after every match day, but once a week during the close season. But and then we also have a Patreon subscription channel as well. So if there's any Newcastle fans that have stumbled upon this, if you follow us on Patreon, there's a lot more content. It's £3 to £8 a month. The £8 a month gives you a podcast every single day about Newcastle, and including some interviews with players and journos, and then obviously more in-depth reviews of the games.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, John. And you guys are heading off to Wembley in your League Cup final. Maybe we might follow suit in the Virtue Trophy. I know both competitions are very big, aren't they?
I think, do you know what it is, though, in all seriousness, if you're in a competition as a club, you want to win it, right? And I think, a lot of our fans took the mickey out of Sunderland when it was the Papa John's Trophy or whatever, and called it the Pizza Cup and all this kind of
Seems to
stuff.
change
And
name every
when
season, doesn't it?
yeah, exactly. And when they won it, and people were kind of ridiculing that, but I just thought, look, if that was us in that situation, you'd want to win a competition that you're in. It's a chance of a day out. They're the things you win. There's a Wigan fan I was on a call with today at work, and I said to her, I said, everyone will remember that you won the FA Cup and that you got relegated that year at the same time, but actually the fans will only care about the cup win. They won't care about the fact that they went down. And it's the same for Portsmouth fans who, got to a position where they won the FA
Same with
Cup,
us with the
and
League Cup.
yes,
Like, we got League Cup in the
yeah,
same year that we got
exactly. Get
relegated.
Obafemi Martins with the winner. I remember that very well.
Exactly. Yes, player for both teams.
So yeah, absolutely. So look, I think that's the thing. You remember those cup wins. That's the memories for fans. And although financially, people, clubs will look at it and go, well, there's more money in the Premier League or the Champions League. It's more important to stay up. All of this kind of nonsense. If you're a Premier League club and you're in, say, at the minute, probably top 14, 13 teams, you need to be attacking this competition because you're probably not going to go down. And then if you're in that mid-table, you might not be in that European chase. So surely, like, that's the competition to attack. Like, go for it and try and win it. And it really frustrates me when I see, like Brentford played a weak side against us at St James's. Really, they made a few changes in the League Cup quarter-final. I just thought, you're 3 games away from Wembley here. Like, if you give this a good game, you've got every chance of creating a memory for your fans. And does that really make a difference? Above like trying to earn another 2 spots in the Premier League for an extra £5 million. Like, no one remembers that. So that's what's wrong with it. So win the trophies, go for the cups. And absolutely, that what happens in the league will happen in the league, and that's what'll get a fan base on side.
Spot on. Thank you so much for your time, John. And yeah, very much looking forward to this game. And good luck for the rest of the season besides Saturday.
Thanks, Sam. Same to yourself, and thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Keep right on.